Here are all my favorite books of 2022. This year I read a total of 41 books. Did I complete my reading challenge? Not even close. Let's just not talk about it. Why save the best for last when we can just start off the video with my #1 favorite of the year? Yeah, the Folk of the Year trilogy, of course. Not me reading my favorite books of the year in January. I just love them so much. If I could choose a world to live in for the rest of my life, this would be it. No doubts about it. January really was a great reading month. Not only did I read my favorite trilogy of all time, but I also read my favorite romance of all time. Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This book has my heart. Nothing compares. Invented the ultimate trope of childhood friends to lovers to strangers to friends to lovers. The most wonderful soulmate story. Please read it. My next favorite is actually the third book in a series, The Addicted for Now. Third book in the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series. These characters feel like family to me. I love it. The next book broke me. I didn't cry, I sobbed. Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Leave it to Colleen Hoover to make me cry over a bird. This next book deserves so much more hype. One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. For me, this is up there with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book made me feel so much. I love the characters. I love everything about it. I have no idea what I would do in this situation. Beautifully written, stunning, the best love story ever. Next book, I feel a bit weird calling it a favorite. However, it was brilliant, so I have to put it on this list. My Dark Vanessa. I can't stress this enough. Please check trigger warnings before picking this up. A brilliant book, deeply thought-provoking, so powerful. This was probably the most disturbing book I ever read in my entire life. I had to put it down multiple times because I couldn't handle it. Proceed with caution with this one. I couldn't pass on the opportunity of mentioning these. Love Second Chance. 7 Days in June. It's the book for you. Look at the tabs. I adored this. Classic. People we meet on vacation. Again with the tabs. Gilmore Girls, but spicy. Specifically, Luke and Lorelai. You're welcome.
Okay, there's this book review going around, a 0-star review on Babbel by a white book reviewer, 0 stars. And I'm just saying this now. I know it's been out for, I think she posted 16 hours ago or whatever, earlier today. And I'm so fucking livid, I don't even know. And so livid that I'm doing this, posting this on TikTok, and I never show my face here or talk on here. So let's go through her review. So spoilers ahead. If you haven't read the book, you might want to skip. This is how a review starts off. You can pause to read, but I'm particularly interested in the last sentence here. She states, sadly, the book reaches its intent by promoting racism to fight racism and violence to obtain a positive social change. Okay, so she's clearly calling reverse racism here. Typical white person behavior, right? Because she's not being centered. White people aren't being centered, and there's no place for white people. And reverse racism is a fucking myth. Sure, there can be racial prejudices, but it's not racism, because racism is linked to power. And power leads to discrimination and oppression. And we all know who's in power here, right? And what violence to obtain positive social change? What the fuck were the colonizers doing? What do you think they were doing? What do you think they were saying to themselves and to others? This is the second slide of a review. You can pause to read. There's a lot to unpack here, just saying that the author has, is using this book to process her hate against white people, yada, yada. A lot of this is kind of ridiculous because the reviewer is completely missing the point of the book. What's funny to me is the last sentence here saying that Letty, who is a white friend of the group, is being criticized for not understanding her friends because she's white. But to the reviewer, it seemed that her friends never seriously try to explain it to her. Why do they have to? Why do they have to center and make Letty feel better? I don't get that. No, that's not how it works.
There once was a geek. That geek was me, who found themselves on the TikTok scene. They scrolled and scrolled all day and night until their brain exploded. If I'm on your FYP, it's likely you're a nerd like me. If you fancy this and these, then hit that plus sign, please.
Let's talk about the Made Men series. What you should know right off the bat is that this is my favourite series of 2022. Book 1 starts off with Nico and Elena. And oh my word, this is probably my favourite book of 2022. I'm not lying, I'm not joking. I don't know why I like this book so much, but I do. I've reread it so many times, it's actually unhealthy. I compare every mafia book to this book. I compare every fictional man to Nico Russo. They're just great in every which way. The plot, the tension, the characters, everything. I honestly can't fault it. There's not one thing that I don't like about this book. Then we move on to book 2. Christian Alistair and Gianna. Listen, if you need a boy-obsessed book, if you want to read boy-obsessed done right, pick up The Maddest Obsession. Honestly, when people say Christian Harper for boy-obsessed, nah. Out of the two Christians, as in Christian Harper from Twisted Lies and Christian Alistair from The Maddest Obsession, I'm picking Christian Alistair every single time. Christian Harper was boy-obsessed, but a bit, you know, but Christian Alistair was boy-obsessed, but just done so well. Another fantastic 5-star. Honestly, Christian is like joint second with Alex Volkov for like my top tier book boyfriends. We all know that Nico is first, by the way. Then we move on to the third book, The Darkest Temptation, which clearly I read on my Kindle. Now listen, it wasn't bad. It was like 4.75. However, wasn't, you know, it wasn't the first two. The first two in this series are superior. The last book, which follows Ronan and Mila, it was okay. You know what? I think it's because I just don't like the kidnapping trope. I despise the kidnapping trope with all that's within me. But this book did it well. Out of all the books that I've read that have the kidnapping trope in it, this one is the best. There are a few things that I didn't, you know, like, but on the whole, it was good. Out of all of the mafia books I've read this year, these are just the best. Nobody compares to Nico and Christian. And if you disagree, please disagree somewhere else.
Here are all of the reasons why I dislike the book It Ends With Us by Colin Hoover. I do want to start this video by saying that this is simply my opinion. I am aware that Colin Hoover is a very popular author here on Booktok, and I'm not trying to come for her fans. I'm just trying to share a little bit more of my experience reading this book. I also really don't think not liking this book is a flex in any shape or form. There are many other popular Booktok books that I have read and really enjoyed, it just wasn't one of them. My first issue with this book is that the characters in the story seem very made up. I'm pretty sure every character in the story is between their early 20s to their mid 20s. And they are all so successful. Every single character in the story is very wealthy, very successful, and very happy in their careers. As someone that is in her late 20s right now, I think it really represents the self-doubt and struggles that you go through in that period in your life. Secondly, I feel like Colin Hoover did very little research when it came to Lily's business. It's an instant hit. Opening a business is very difficult. It comes with so many challenges, and I just didn't feel like those challenges were portrayed at all in this story. However, my biggest criticism with the story is, of course, the relationship between her and Ryo, and more specifically, the way abuse is portrayed in the story. I am not saying any of these things to invalidate anything that Colin Hoover or her mother have gone through in their personal lives. I'm just talking about how this was portrayed in this story. Halfway through the mark, you can kind of see how this relationship is affecting Lily mentally and of course physically, but I don't think that Colin Hoover explored how that really affects women as well as she should have. One of the things that stood out the most for me is that right after she has the worst night of her life, she leaves Ryo, she goes to Atlas's house, she spends the night there, she wakes up, she hears a knock at the door. And it's a bunch of men who are there to play poker, I think, with Atlas because it's poker night at his place. Lily is a little bit nervous at first, but right after she's completely fine hanging out with a bunch of men she has never seen in her life after the worst thing imaginable could have happened to her. The whole scene just felt very absurd to me. It just made me feel like the author's exploration of physical abuse was just a plot device. I also really didn't like the fact that towards the end of her pregnancy, she still lives with Ryo. What truly drove me crazy in this book was her speech in the end of the story, because she did one of the things that I hate the most. Classic speech in which someone tells a man to imagine the situation being done to a woman in their lives, because they can't possibly see just women as human beings. I don't like that the only reason he truly realizes how badly he hurt Lily is when he can only consider the pain that he inflicted upon her being inflicted on a woman that he sees some kind of like ownership over it. Once again, that's just my opinion. Writing is subjective, stories are subjective, and a single person will experience reading a story in a completely different way. I'm sure there are plenty of books that I love that you probably cannot stand.
The absolute best book that I've read all year, probably I'll ever read in my lifetime. I would honestly give up my firstborn child for this book. If you like dark academia, complex characters, and like a gut heart-wrenching story that's gonna leave you bawling into the pages, you need to read this book. The book is Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I'm shocked that you can get this from Book of the Month, brand new hardcover, for $5. That insane.
Okay, ignore every single thing I said about Sinners Anonymous. Because after I read Sinners Anonymous, I read Sinners Condemned and Sinners Consumed. And, Miss Sketcher, hi friend. I'd just like to kindly ask, what in heaven or earth did you put into book 2? Oh my goodness me. Okay, so book 1 was like a solid 3.9. Book 2? Book 2? 4.5. And I don't give out my 4.5s willy-nilly. It was just fantastic in every which way. Then book 3 being the continuation of book 2. Oh, it was perfect. If you haven't read this series, read it, please. If you have read this series, tell me why Gabe is my favourite and he doesn't even have a book yet. Oh my word. In my mind it goes Gabe, then Rafe, then Angelo. Then Miss Sketcher, where is Gabe's book? And why is it not in my hands? This is one of these series that I read on my Kindle, but then I automatically go and buy the physical copy because it was that good. So far, this is a 4-star series altogether.